Good morning. Thanks for joining us again for Healthy Happy Hour. I'm Angela Berg here at Cure for the Kids Foundation, and I have with me today Erica Bailey, our extraordinary infection control and compliance nurse, so that we can have a candid conversation and share with you more information, a little deeper dive into the flu vaccine and why is it that people think they can get the flu from the flu vaccine? Why is it that we know you cannot get the flu from the flu vaccine? And maybe answer some of those deep burning questions that people have never really understood but had heard from other people and believed some misinformation out there. And so we want to make sure everyone is as healthy as possible through this cold and flu season. And so Erica, let's start by talking a little bit about the flu vaccine. It is an inactive vaccine, which means it does not carry any ability to create pathology and actually create illness. So will you talk a little bit about why people feel like they might still get symptoms?
Yeah, that's one of our life's great confusions that are out there, that you can get sick. You are definitely not going to get the flu from the flu vaccine, but what you are going to get is the effects of your immune system starting to build those antibodies and build that resistance to the virus. And so what that means is you might start feeling like you're getting sick. You get a little bit achy and you're like, oh, do I have a low fever or temperature? And you kind of get those things like you feel like it's coming on. But that just means your immune system's working. That means you have a healthy, functioning immune system, and it is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And most people find those symptoms pretty mild. The sore arm is really the one that people report the most when the vaccine goes in. But if your doctor says it's okay for you to take some Tylenol and Motrin, usually knocks out some of those symptoms within 12 hours. And most people report very few symptoms beyond that. So it's very safe and it's very healthy. And it's actually good for your immune system to get that little bit extra workout. It's kind of like taking your immune system to the gym.
Exactly, it is. It's like teaching it a new lesson or studying.
Yes.
Teaching your body how to protect itself. So that's an important point, that vaccines, the way that vaccines work is by giving our immune system a notice to develop the antibodies to be able to fight these things. And so that's so important, that if you're feeling anything, you're feeling your immune system doing its job. The reason maybe that some of us feel it a little more than others is that it's also a well-known phenomena that we all have different mind-body connection strength. And some of us may not notice that we are feeling a little bit off. Some of us may notice that it's very mild, very little off. And some of us may be very sensitive to what's going in our body. And it's important to be able to acknowledge that and then allow our body grace and allow the opportunity maybe even for a little more rest while it's doing this extra work. Let's talk about, because there are times that there are differences in vaccines, live vaccines versus these inactive vaccines. And we had a very popular live flu virus for quite a while. I know that it was gone for a few seasons and I think it's back again. But let's talk about the difference in those viruses that say they're attenuated, and what should people consider when they figure out which, because I know I have made no bones about I don't like needles. I am a needle phobe too. And so when that vaccine first came out and it was a spray to go up my nose, I thought it was a miracle.
Yeah.
And surely this was going to be the way of the future. And it has not been as helpful to further vaccine development as we had initially hoped. But let's talk about the differences between our body's reaction to live vaccines versus inactive vaccines. What do you think is probably the most important education piece that we can provide to people about the differences in these vaccines?
I definitely think the live attenuated vaccines need to be a conversation between you and your provider or your child's provider, because there are other considerations, like for example, our chemotherapy patients, we're not going to give them live viruses because their immune systems, the immunocompromised, they just can't fight it quite as well. So there are certain considerations as far as where we're starting from, I think is one of the main differences, is that we do have to be mindful of, is the patient getting the vaccine going to be in the healthy enough place to be able to have their immune system do what we want it to do, which is build those antibodies, versus kind of doing the opposite and like going into full sickness and kind of go from there. But it's a little half step of consideration with your provider, I think is the best way to describe it. But they are still very widespreadly safe. Kids get a great immunity from our attenuated vaccines, adults as well, and it's just a conversation that I think that needs to happen to make sure that it's the right choice.
Exactly. I love that. So the most important point that we are trying to make, the two of us, is that you cannot get the flu from the vaccine. You
Correct.
cannot get the flu from the vaccine. You can get a very hefty reaction from your immune system, which is exactly what it's supposed to do in order to protect you through the whole season. Let's take one more minute to just talk about how they determine the flu vaccine each year. Why is it not the same flu vaccine year after year? And you had mentioned in a previous episode of us talking about being healthy and keeping healthy through this cold and flu season, that that we anxiously wait for data about how effective is the flu vaccine this year. So we know that they take the best guess, for lack of any better word, the best scientific guess at what are going to be the most prevalent. And I think people often misunderstand that most prevalent means the one that's going to be the toughest, hardest hitting virus that's going to most likely end up in hospitalization to folks, and come up with that. And you had talked about this year's vaccine. Tell me what that preliminary data is showing.
Yes, and the infection nurse in me just loves data and loves this science. So, but you're exactly right. Scientists will track the different strains of flu virus over time. They do watch even during non-cold and flu seasons how the flu is spreading. You know, is there an outbreak on the other side of the world? What are the travel patterns? There are so many things that come into this best educated guess. And then they decide what the mix of different viruses that they're going to put into the vaccine for that cold and flu season. It is a very educated guess, and they get it right more times than they do have a miss, but they take those viruses and then they put multiple strains in our flu shots and hopefully cover us against the 3 or 4 different strains that happen to become prevalent in our geographic region of the United States during that season. So we do watch the data and make sure that if we have a vaccine, for example, there's some flu A, which is just one of the viruses in this year's vaccine. That is what we are seeing people present with, and we are seeing that we're having milder disease, that they're not being hospitalized as much. This is definitely some of the data that is trickled in as the cold and flu season progresses. And then they look at that and like, okay, this year was a hit. What did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we fix for next time? And so they try to give us the best possible cocktail of all the different flu vaccines or flu viruses so we can have the best immunity.
That brings up a really good point when you talk about the symptom, the milder disease. Yeah. It's important, I think, for people to understand. They often think they get a vaccine and it means you're never going to get the flu. That's not accurate. What vaccines are intended to do are, knowing that our bodies may still get exposed, it's meant to decrease severity so that we may have much milder symptoms and for a much shorter duration, and not be hospitalized and not have a catastrophic illness or complication from the vaccine. And so I think that is a really important point to bring up too. So some reaction, it means it's working and your body is responding. Give some grace, allow some rest.
Drink water.
but keep going to protect yourself, your family, and all of those around you. And so thanks so much for being with me today,
I
Erica.
appreciate you having me.
Appreciate you and your wisdom being shared with us. And we look forward to bringing you more education in the future. Don't forget to reach out and let us know what are the subjects that you want to hear about and learn about, and tell what's myth and what's fact, because we're here for you. We'll see you next time.
National